All right. Welcome everyone to today's webinar that's hosted by TechSEDA, the Texas ETD Association. Today we're going to be talking about an introduction to Vireo. Right quick before we get started, wanted to go over just a few things before I turn it over. First is just a little bit about TechSEDA. We were founded in 2009, and we are free and open for anyone to join, including those outside of Texas. It's really a very low traffic listserv, and where we advertise different educational opportunities for people who work with theses and dissertations. Our mission is to provide a network of support for ETD professionals in the state of Texas specifically, but anyone really, and to connect them with organizations and resources that enrich the work that they do. We have previous webinars. This is our second year series coming to a close, and as such, the webinar is being recorded. All participants will receive an email with links to the recording and the presentation slides. But if you can't wait, you can visit our YouTube channel. All you have to do is search TechSEDA in there and we come right up. You can watch previous webinars. Be sure to like and subscribe, as they say, to receive notification of new webinars as we post them. A little bit about the webinar logistics right now. So we ask that all attendees be muted to prevent background noise. It's just best for everyone. And we will have a question and answer session that will be held after the presenter has spoken, but you can ask your questions at any time. The way that you do that is if you click on the main screen where you should be seeing the slides, a menu will appear at the bottom of circles. Click on the circle with the little speech bubble in it. When you do, the chat will open up on the right side of your screen, and then the final step is to select all panelists and then type your chat message in there. The chat message isn't recorded for the video, and so I'll be reading those out at the question and answer time. If the buttons fade away, because they do, just click on the screen then for them to appear. That's also a way you can double check if you're muted. The button circle on the left will be red if you are muted. So with that out of the way, I want to introduce our featured speaker. Stephanie Larrison is the Electronic Resources Librarian at Texas State University, and she has led the charge there to implement Vireo beginning in the fall of 2009. She continues to be the primary point of contact between the graduate college staff, library staff, and the Texas Digital Library on the use of Vireo. She has also been a member of TDL's Vireo user group since its inception and has served as co-chair of the steering committee since 2011. And with that, we're going to transition over to her, and I will be quiet.
Okay, Stephanie, it should be transferred to you.
Okay, I see it. Thank you. Hello, everyone. And just one moment while I pull up my presentation. Go. I don't think it usually doesn't take this long, but while we're waiting, please just remember to mute your microphones if possible. And you can just insert any questions during in the chat window. So thank you, Shelley, for that introduction, and thank you to the rest of the leadership team of the Texas ETD Association for arranging this webinar, and Baylor University for hosting us via WebEx. As Shelley mentioned, I'm a co-chair of the Vireo Users Group Steering Committee, and our other co-chair is Billy Peterson-Lugo of Baylor. I've been working with developers and have been testing the newest version of Vireo for almost 5 years, and my institution has been using Vireo for about 10 years, so I am very familiar with this product. And I am so pleased to be speaking to a new audience and introducing you to the Vireo ETD submission system. In our session today, I want to begin with the origins of Vireo so you understand when and why it was created. Some of you may not be familiar with ETD submission systems. There are frankly not many of them available, so we'll talk about what Vireo is exactly and some of its main features. Then we'll transition to a live demonstration so you can see for yourself what students would experience interacting with Vireo, as well as the staff side and committee chair views. And finally, I plan to leave time at the end for any questions. So Vireo was created by the Texas Digital Library, or TDL, which was founded in 2005 as a consortium of academic libraries. This consortium allows libraries to pool their limited resources in order to address common needs supporting digital scholarship. Currently, the Texas Digital Library has 24 academic member libraries that are supported by a small technology and communications staff of 9 people that office at the University of Texas in Austin. When TDL began in 2005, the member libraries needed an institutional repositories in order to house the faculty-born digital publications and growing collections of electronic thesis and dissertations. And to address that need, TDL began their first shared technology and infrastructure by providing its members with hosted DSpace repositories. Shortly thereafter, once the repositories were in place, the members recognized they needed a better way to facilitate the transfer of those theses and dissertations from the student through the graduate school or the library and into the repository. And so that's when TDL built Vireo. Following that is the evolution of scholarly communication. The next need of the members was to have an open journal system. So they provided that's software by the Public Knowledge Project. After that, we have digital preservation services they provided. And then we needed big data storage. So we have a new Dataverse provided by TDL. And then most recently, they are supporting their members in understanding and learning about open education resources. So in conjunction with the Texas State Library and Archive Commission, they helped organize a statewide summit on OERs. But let's turn back to Vireo. In order to create a system to meet the needs of their member libraries, TDL applied for and received an Imls grant of over $800,000 provided from 2007 to 2010. And IMLS stands for the Institution of Museum and Library Services. Now, the grant was not just for creating an electronic thesis and dissertation submission system, but it was also for developing metadata ETD standards and a federated repository. It's important to note that Vireo was built to be open source. Open source means that the software is available for anyone to download, modify, and use. It's not for sale anywhere, and no private companies control it. The Texas Digital Library is committed to maintaining the code on behalf of its members, which are the largest group of Vireo users. But the code will remain freely available, and development of new features outside of TDL are always encouraged and welcome. These are all of the Texas universities using Vireo. But we also have a growing number of institutions outside of Texas, including University of Illinois, Georgia Tech, Harvard, Princeton, East Carolina University, Florida Tech, Johns Hopkins, and more. All of these institutions are members of the Vireo users group. Our group exists to gather and prioritize enhancement requests in order to guide the development of Vireo. We're already on version 4, and each version that we've developed was to add new features proposed and voted on by our members. The latest version is arguably the most customizable ETD submission system available. It was built to address two long-standing needs that were not previously developed due to their complexity. The first feature is the ability to have customized submission forms, or to have more than one type of submission form and not just a one-size-fits-all. The second feature was to have controlled vocabularies and be able to apply them wherever we wanted to. Finally, the users group has a listserv which serves as an avenue for the exchange of information and a place to ask questions, share a success, and offer tips or best practices. Now, what is Vireo? It's a workflow tool to move thesis, dissertations, and other scholarly works required for completing a degree from student to reviewers to a repository. Now, the reviewers I am talking about are those in a graduate college or library who are confirming that the manuscript meets university guidelines on format and metadata requirements. Vireo is not an editing suite. Students interact with Vireo only after a committee has reviewed and approved their thesis or dissertation, and after reviewers do any preliminary formatting checks that happen before the final document has been reviewed and approved by their committee. Vireo is also not a repository. It is not meant for permanent storage, and it definitely is not accessible to researchers like an institutional repository would be. And speaking of repositories, I want to emphasize that students do not need to upload their final manuscripts separately, nor do they need to separately submit to ProQuest if that's something that you do. They only need to submit once with Vireo, and the staff take care of the rest. On the next couple of slides, I have some great features of Vireo to tell you about in no particular order. First, it works with your Active Directory, so students and staff logging in use university credentials. So to accomplish this, Vireo is configured to work with Shibboleth. So access via registration is available, and that is something that we have our test system set up as, but it's certainly not your only option. Vireo provides email templates and rules to make repetitive tasks more efficient. And when I get to the demo, I will show you the emails that were automatically generated at the submission. It produces multiple file export types, such as Mark 21, XML, Excel, and ProQuest-specific zip files. The Excel export file is helpful for reporting number of thesis or dissertations received in a semester or a year, maybe how many ETDs submitted, had a particular faculty member as the chair, how many ETDs were for a certain degree or a certain college, whatever you can think of. Any information that's collected during a submission can be exported and used for analysis. Vireo will deposit an ETD into the institutional repository with a single click of a button. Of course, with that kind of power, you would need to clearly delineate who is responsible for that task. You can have an unlimited amount of customized submission forms. In our demo, you will see several colleges which have been set up to receive submissions. Vireo also allows unlimited use of controlled vocabularies. For example, if ETDs are reviewed and approved by separate departments or colleges, they could all have their own personalized list of faculty names for students to choose from when they're adding their committee chair or advisor. Consistency in how names appear is a common requirement for library catalogs and institutional repositories. So if you have not personally corrected a name to its authorized form, you can be sure that someone at the library will. So having a controlled list of those names can be a big time saver. Committee chairs can also interact with Vireo to verify the manuscript submitted is the one that the committee approved. And they can also approve the student's embargo selection. So this is an optional feature and not everyone uses it. Students agree to the repository license during submission, and their name and date of agreement will be logged. You can also ask students to upload any administrative files with their submissions, maybe something like a signature page or evidence of completing a related requirement. These administrative files will not be exported into the repository, but they are also not meant to remain in Vireo forever. With Vireo 4, the institution has complete control over what information to collect from a student. New fields can be added, and all fields can be hidden if not needed. Vireo 4 conforms to the most recent update of descriptive metadata guidelines for ETDs. These were written by a TDL working group, and it's linked here for later reference. And finally, the last thing I want to mention is that it integrates with Orchid, which is an identification system that allows scholars to manage their work no matter where it's published. So now let's take a look at Vireo in action, and specifically Vireo 4, which is brand new, and it's actually not yet in production anywhere. The official code was released only 2 weeks ago. In the interest of time, I'm going to use some screenshots for those initial pages for the first steps, so you don't have to watch me check the boxes while you wait. But then I will transition to our test site of Vireo 4, where we'll complete the student submission, we'll view emails which were sent to the student or committee chair, and I'm using, just FYI, I'm using made-up email addresses so that we can quickly see everything generated by the system. Also, we'll look at the staff side of Vireo and run through a typical workflow. So here's your first look of Vireo. This is what the student will see when they first log in. Now the highlighted text I put there, and just as an emphasis that Vireo comes into play only after a student defends their dissertation. So the highlighted text says, once you have passed the final defense, satisfied the requirements of your committee, that's when you begin to use Vireo. Now the text of this screen and the text anywhere that you see in Vireo is completely customizable. This is just the out-of-the-box version. So, but it's not to be used until the student and their committee have completed their work. So after the student logs in, the next screen they will see is this one where they need to make a selection. So this is a test system, and during some recent training, we were all creating submission forms that differ by college. So it's up to the institution to decide how they want to organize their submission forms. You could have one submission form for everyone to use, or even just two, maybe one for dissertations, one for thesis, and one for thesis, or whatever it is you need. I'm going to choose my college, and then a new box will appear. You may have noticed that colleges have the number 2 next to them, and that indicates how many submission forms are available, how many things are linked to it. I'm going to choose to submit a dissertation, so I will choose the doctoral one. And when I do, once I make that selection, the box at the bottom turns from gray to blue and indicates that I can begin. At this point, I'm going to transition to our live version of Vireo, where I have pre-filled in the submission form. So give me one moment to switch my screens. All right. I believe that we are sharing, so please let me know if you do not see Vireo. And I'm actually in the wrong screen. Okay. One moment, I need to get into my student submission. That's already in progress, so ignore all of that. Okay. So after the student logs in, they have chosen which route to go. You've led them in the right direction. The first thing that they see is a screen to fill in just their basic information. So you can see that there are some required fields that are indicated by an asterisk in bold, and there's other ones that are optional. I've also hidden a few fields like year of birth and permanent phone and permanent email because I did not want to use them. I want to draw your attention to college, department, degree, and major. All of these have a controlled vocabulary associated with them, but they behave differently. So with degree, you can see I have this drop down, a little arrow for a drop down menu. I am clicking all over this field and nothing happens. But if I click on the drop down menu, you can see all of the options I have available. That drop down arrow means that this field you must choose from the controlled vocabulary that's been provided. You have no other choice. However, we see that we do not have this arrow with major. So I am not limited. Once you begin typing, Vireo is going to start suggesting things in that, words in that controlled list that may apply to you, and then you can just click and select it. However, you can also begin typing, and if nothing is available, you can just continue to add a new vocabulary. Right now I typed in OR, and everything in this list has something with OR in it, but I'm going to continue that. With ornithology, it doesn't appear, but the system will accept my answer. Now don't worry, for those of you who understand a controlled vocabulary, that it really should be controlled. This new word is actually not added to that list, so it is something separate. The next part of the submission form is our license agreement. There's actually two that are provided by default in Vireo. There's the institution license. This would be customized to be the same as what you have in your institutional repository. But we also have the ProQuest license. This is exactly the same as ProQuest provides either on their written documents or either their online submission. The next page, we continue to fill out information about our manuscript, committee members, and embargo selections. So the graduation semester is configurable by institution, so you can choose which months correspond to the semesters that you actually graduate your students. Submission type is another controlled vocabulary where you can see you must choose from the options provided. The blue and red boxes on the right are to either add new things or to remove. So it just means I can add more values to my keywords if I want by clicking the blue plus sign. I can add birds. But if later I decide, well, I really don't want that, I'm going to go ahead and click on the red minus sign, and that can remove it. So anytime that you see those colors on that side, it means that you can add more values if you like. And down here we have it says committee chair. This is one thing that really varies by institution. Not everyone uses the term committee chair. So the word here can change to advisor, to faculty member, whatever it is that you want to use. And the same thing with the committee members. In fact, any of these words, if you don't like, if you don't actually use that term or you prefer something else, all of those can be changed to something else. And finally, Vireo does have some default embargoes provided, but the duration and the name and the description are entirely up to the institution. And this next page is where we actually upload the documents. So I've already uploaded my primary document, which is a PDF file, and I've also included an administrative file, a graduate application document. So you may have noticed previously I mentioned you don't have to, Vireo can be used for more than just the actual dissertation or thesis, the actual scholarly work. So it can be used to also deposit or provide any other necessary information that a student might need to give to the graduate college. And in Vireo 4, it works a little bit differently where the drag and drop capability comes into play. Your other option is simply to click on that arrow or in this box and it will open up the usual screen where you can browse and choose your files. And finally, we have our screen to review the submission before things are sent. And if something required was missed, you'll see that it will be in red and we'll also have this link to fix it. So until all the requirements, all the required fields have been completed, this confirm and submit button will not activate. So I need to go back really quickly and agree to my ProQuest license because I skipped that. So I'm going to click there. I can continue to the document and I can also just skip right back to the end from here. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and confirm and submit. And the student will receive this post-submission form to let them know that their submission has been received. You can also set it up to where they will receive an email. So everything that's on this page it's provided by default, but you customize it and tailor it to your specific needs. Now I'm going to go to a different tab so we can see what the committee member just received as opposed to I can spell correctly. Okay, so moments ago, seconds ago evenly, this is the email that a committee chair, if you choose the option, can receive to notify them that their student has submitted their document, and also if they choose to, they are invited to go into the Vireo system and either approve the manuscript that was provided, and they can also approve the embargo period. Now the email template filled in the name of the student, the submission type, and here in the middle you can see where it filled in, it took the title of my dissertation, and it also provides the status. So we have many different variable fields that will pull that data from the submission into your email templates. I'm going to click on this this link right now. So there's going to be an error pop up, but that's because we're in a test system. So just ignore that for a second. So this is the faculty advisor screen. It looks a lot like what the student sees to review their submission. I'm just going to scroll down to where the faculty is actually going to interact with the system. First of all, here's where the manuscript is, so the faculty can actually open it up to confirm. They can also see any other files that were provided. The application activity is the log of actions that have been taken. It's visible to anyone who's in the system, or the student, the faculty member, the staff working on it, not everybody. And here is where the faculty member can approve an embargo and also approve the application or the manuscript. If they choose, they can also add some comments, which I'll go ahead and do right here. And then I'm going to submit. Okay. They made a mistake. This is simply telling them, I unapproved this embargo. I made a mistake or something. So, but they also have a little bit of instruction here. Your input's been recorded. You can return to this page or provide additional input in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of that screen. And now let's see what's happened on the staff side. Okay. This is the staff view of Vireo. And we only have a couple of submissions, so it's not going to be very hard for me to, and I need to refresh this page. Since it was just submitted, it's actually this status should be submitted. I already had it pulled up and we weren't refreshed yet. So I only have 2 submissions, so I don't have to go hunting around and looking for it. So I'm just going to go ahead and open it up. This is where the staff can review everything that's been provided, the documents. They can edit information and can communicate with the student. So to make edits, you would just simply click on the pencil icon, make some changes, whatever you need. Click the check mark to accept, or you can click the X to exit without saving any changes. So the document information tab has all the other stuff that, all the information the student filled in their document information tab. Over here on the left, we have a submission status box that will show what the current submission status is. If there is anyone who's assigned to this particular submission, last action, and some just easily viewed information that you might need. Scrolling down, this is the action log. It was named the activity log in the faculty view. Again, it is tracking the activity of the submission. Over here we have custom action checklist. So this is also just, you choose what it is that you want here. It helps people keep track of what has been done and then also what needs to be done. These can also be configured where it's visible to the student. Choose which ones are and which ones are just for internal use. All the files are located at the bottom, but you can also open that primary document from up at the top. Go ahead and click here to jump back down. There are a couple of ways to communicate with the student. One of them is add comment, where it opens up a dialog box where you can either just compose an email here, or you can choose an email template, make some changes to it if you want, and then send it away. The other option is to add a file, which is what I am going to choose. One thing that I have learned about graduate colleges, when they provide feedback to a student, many of them do it one of 2 ways. And one is to mark up the actual manuscript and then send back that copy with the markup. The other is to just provide the feedback and the comments of what needs to change in another document. So Vireo 4 allows you to do either of those. I can either replace the document by uploading the marked up version, but I'm going to choose to provide a feedback file. So I can select the type of document. This is important because you only want your supplemental files and your actual manuscript to go into the repository. So you need these file types so the system knows exactly what is supposed to go on different export types. I'm going to choose feedback. That's what the purpose is. I'm going to go grab my file. Okay, so it's already loaded, I believe. I need to add my email recipients. Not sure if the capitalization matters, so I better correct that. I need to add plus to really add them to that. And we have a needs corrections template that's already in place that will instruct the student what they need to do. I can add some additional terms here if I want, otherwise I just leave it as is. This also has both the add comment and add file. You can also mark this flag submission as needs corrections, so you can change the status at the very same time that you are sending information to the student. I'll go ahead and click submit. And then we'll see what the student received. Okay, this is my needs correction email. So as the student, I would receive this. It also, like the faculty one, we have this email template that will fill in the title, the type, the status, any information that you need. So, but this instructs the student that you need to make some corrections. In this test system, this link does not work, so I'm just going to manually go back to show you. Once the student logs back into Vireo, what they're going to see. Okay, so instead of login, they're now going to see manage and view your submissions. I already had one in progress, but this one is for the doctoral, and you'll see the status says needs corrections. And then over here, I can edit it. Get a big old message telling you what you need to do. So application requires you to make corrections. There is like a quick little link to jump down to replace the manuscript, which we have a bug apparently and it didn't work. So I'm just going to scroll down. This is the feedback document the student would look at to see what they need to do. And if I want, this is where I would replace the manuscript. So, but in the interest of time, there's really nothing that I need to do. I'm just going to go ahead and leave everything as is. And I'm going to say corrections have been completed. And it will make sure, are you sure? Because I will not, the student cannot make any more additional edits if they send this back in. I'm sure. So once again, there's also a different message that you can provide the students, a different screen that said, we've received your corrections. So back on the staff side, let's go back out to that list. And now you see the status here is corrections received. So it's easy to see here since we don't have 100 people, 100 different submissions yet. So I don't have to use filters. I want to come back in here and show you all the other statuses which are available. So we have the corrections received. Some suggested different statuses will be provided up here at the top, but all of the options are available under the drop-down menu. Most of these are simply labels that you use to whatever makes sense for your institution, but some of them actually do put a like a timestamp, a date stamp in the metadata or things that actually take an action. Approved is one of those. So approved is what the graduate college would do when the student has satisfactorily made all of the edits to the dissertation or the thesis, and they've satisfied any other requirements for graduation. So a message will be sent to the student that, yay, you're done. These are your next steps. So that is that signal. The one that comes after approved, the pending publication is one that libraries and graduate college typically use, as this is the transition one that indicates the graduate college is finished with everything that they need to do and that it is ready for handover to the library. And then I mentioned also that just with one click, you can publish this or send it to the repository. And it's true, this all you need to do is click on published, which I can't do since we are not set up for it. But the moment that someone changed pending publication to published, it is a copy of the manuscript, and all of the metadata is sent to the repository. I'm going to go back out now to the staff view, just give you a little bit more information. So typically you're going to have way more than 2. And so we have filtering and columns and stuff for you to use. So I've already added some filters for status, assigned to department. You can actually choose if there's a field in Vireo, it can be used as a filter. So let's see. So even though I only have one thing in pending publication, I can click on that, and actually I have 2 things in pending publication, I forgot. So anyway, it will it limits everything to what the status is if you choose that. So there's a billion different ways to filter just for the things that you need. We also have customized view where you decide exactly which columns, what information you want to see on this main display. So again, every single field that's in Vireo is optional as a column to look at. And then the last thing that I wanted to show you with Vireo is those exports. And specifically, there's the Excel export that's for helpful for everyone for reporting, and it will simply take everything that is in view and send it away. But you can see there's additional library and institutional repository files, DSpace SMETS and DSpace Simple. So 2 versions of the MARC files. And that, my friends, is Vireo. I'm going to just slip back over into the PowerPoint for just a moment. The code for Vireo is available at GitHub, so we have a link to it here if you're interested. We also have a web page for Vireo users group, which also has links to the documentation, both for Vireo 3 and for Vireo 4. So at this time, I would be happy to answer any of your questions.
All right, Stephanie, we've had a couple questions come in through chat that I will read aloud while others can kind of formulate. So Jacquelina asked around like slide 11 for you, when you were speaking about like the workflows, our reviewers are not members of the students committee.
Are they not? Is that a question? Are they members of a students committee?
Right, I think you were talking about reviewers.
I see,
And then, like,
I understand.
committee is different.
Yeah, I guess that depends on the institution. The reviewers that I am talking about here, the folks that would be interacting with Vireo, that would be doing this staff side, no, they are not on the committee. So no, this would be maybe administrative personnel at a college or department. It's just anyone who does the administrative side of taking those thesis or dissertations or whatever scholarly manuscripts there might be, and just processing them as a graduation requirement. So this is not intended to be used by committee members to work on the content or provide feedback to the students.
Okay, she says thanks. Next question that I saw a lot of coming in, so I'll just try to go in the order which I see them. Renee has said, we have students who click on the corrections completed button all the time to get that screen out of the way before they actually upload the new text. Is there a way they can minimize it or move it out of the way?
It's responsive. So that I have anyway. I don't believe that it is. I mean, if the screen is larger, or you actually have kind of it minimized, that box will actually go over to the right. So it won't be right there smack in the middle. But I don't think that that's anything that can be minimized. And actually in this version, as you may have seen, we have a bug on that. We have a bug on it where it didn't pop me down to where I was supposed to be. But I think that you might be asking about Vireo 3, and I'm not aware that there's any way to minimize that. Just make the screen smaller and it will pop to the right.
Okay. Can Vireo be used with Content DM or Digitool, or only open access IR software can integrate with Vireo?
Vireo was built to work seamlessly with DSpace, but it is agnostic in terms of what repository. Anything that can use with the SWORD protocol, that's SWORD, I do not know what that acronym stands for, but anything that uses the SWORD protocol can take the manuscript and the metadata directly from Vireo to the repository. So, but with all the different, those export formats, the either DSpace METs or just the XML or Mark XML, you can use different export types to export it from Vireo and then upload it into a repository. Now there could be institutions out there that use the same repository software that you use or platform, but all the TDL libraries use the DSpace, and so that's what I'm familiar with. And then we don't know exactly how the open source community has altered or amended their Vireo and how they use their which repositories types that they use, unless they volunteer that information. So that would be a great question to put on the listserv to find other people who use a different repository other than DSpace. I know they exist, I just don't know who they are.
Awesome. Is there a possibility of authenticating with Orchid rather than manually adding it?
I think authentication is actually may not be the right term. The Orchid integration, there is if the student doesn't either has not registered for an Orchid ID or doesn't remember the Orchid ID, there's actually a link right by that field or right under it that takes them to Orchid. So they can open up a new window and either find their ID if they forgot it, or they can apply, they can register and get one immediately right there and just copy it right into Vireo. Did that answer the question? If not, rephrase it in a different way and I can see if I can address that.
Okay. While we're waiting to see if that was good, the next question is, can you only upload PDF documents? What about Word documents?
No, you can't, sorry, no, you're not limited to PDF. Now, traditionally, ETD, the primary manuscript is in PDF format, and that is why the PDF is, it's set up by default that way in Vireo. And typically, any other supplementary documents, I mean, whether audio files, video files, Word docs, spreadsheets, whatever, all of that, yes, can absolutely be uploaded as a supplement. Now, one new and unique thing about Vireo, the Vireo 4 will allow you to take off the PDF requirement for the primary file. So you can remove that restriction in case you're at an institution that is a little more advanced and forward, and you're accepting the non-traditional thesis and dissertations that may be, you know, the primary scholarship is just not in text. So if you want to choose that as that's the primary form of that scholarship, you can certainly take that PDF option off.
All right. The update about the Orchid question, Nikki has put in that Orchid have stated that they would prefer people sign in with Orchid rather than type it. So
I might have to defer to Billy on this because when I think of Orchid, it is not an authentication. So that's I'm not quite sure.
The only preference, this is Billy, the only preference I've heard related to Orchid and DSpace, we'll just speak about the DSpace repository where it goes, is that
Okay.
the preference is for once that Orchid ID is displayed, that it be a link that takes people to the Orchid account, which is not how it currently behaves in DSpace. We can take it and we can get it over to DSpace, but I haven't heard anything about authenticating through Orchid.
Yeah, Orchid, at least for many places, Orchid, that's an identification that is optional. So the advantage of having authentication through Shibboleth or your institutional, your Active Directory, using your university credentials, everyone is required to have that at a university. That is it's what helps you get access to databases and everything. It's an official form of ID, and it is controlled by your IT security. So, so Vireo, I mean, it integrates with a very secure method of authenticating that only folks from your institution are going to be able to get into your version of Vireo. So you're not going to have just anybody off the street just poking around or anything. So it's not getting hacked and you get a bunch of junk in there. So
One other comment about Orchid, there is an integration, and maybe this is what is being referenced, that you click on, let's say you're in Vireo, you click on a link to Orchid that then allows you to log into your Orchid account, and then it passes that Orchid ID back to the institution, or you give permission for Vireo to collect that Orchid ID. So that may be the piece that you're talking about, is that integration, and that integration piece is not in Vireo, but I have seen it in other systems. So you don't actually type in the Orchid ID, you click on a link that takes you over to Orchid, it allows you to log into Orchid, and then you give Orchid permission to pass your Orchid ID back to Vireo. And that might be what you were talking about. And that does not exist in Vireo.
But there are two things that are happening in the background in the Orchid field for Vireo. You can turn them on or off, but one of them is a validation, and the other one is maybe that one is authentication. I'm not really sure. So one of them is making sure that the format of what you're inputting in there is the correct format of an Orchid ID, which is 4 digits, dash 4 digits, dash 4 digits, dash 4 digits. So, but the second part of it is to make sure that that particular sequence of numbers is attributed to the first name and the last name that was provided in the form. So,
Okay.
so there's some checks and balances going on in the background.
All right. The next question is there a status for embargo extension requested? And does that status change the date the full text is released in the IR?
Not within Vireo. Vireo is using kind of the embargoes. Well, the embargoes are coded, they have a code in them that is specific to ProQuest. So, but within Vireo, it is, the embargoes work just kind of as a label or a filter. You cannot take, Vireo will not automatically release anything based on an embargo period or anything. So you actually, you use your filters to find things that are available, that are ready to be released, and they're released that way. So at this time, there isn't anything that will just sort of trigger that release. Often that's kind of, I mean, a lot of universities don't want to do that. Some do, some do not and stuff. But if it's ever there, it'll be an optional feature. But you don't necessarily just want things going because a student might want to extend the embargo, and you want to have some sort of opportunity to stop that or change it before it happens. But that being said, I think there are some places, I think Baylor is one of them, where you do some folks do export the manuscripts and the metadata to their repository when something is under embargo, but they can do it in a way to where it is not actually openly accessible yet. Perhaps the metadata is, but not the manuscript. So, and the information that is passed from Vireo, the metadata, can be actually, there is an actual date. Sorry. In some of the export files, you do have an actual date getting stamped in the background that goes out with the export file. So a DSpace or other institutional repository, you can map that to the right field to where it can trigger that when it reaches that release date, the manuscript or the whole record would be open and available.
All right. I know we're getting near the end and we still have a lot of questions, so maybe we can sneak a few more in. But Stephanie, can other fields be made into a controlled vocabulary dropdown, such as department?
Absolutely. Everything.
Also,
Anything you can think of. In Vireo 4, yes.
in Vireo 4. Also, in the action log, are the student actions the blank ones?
No, the blank is there because this is a test system. So once you're officially logged in, it's the person who made that. But yes, sorry, that would be the student. But since this is a test system, they're not showing up. In a real system, that blank, yes, would be the student name.
All right.
Or it could be, if it was, it could also be the staff person who changes the action. So whoever it is who's doing that action, yes, that's recorded.
Okay, and then I think this is probably the one we have last question that we can get to today. Does Vireo use the SWORD protocol to send stuff to ProQuest or FTPS?
For ProQuest, it is an FTP. So it exports a zip file that is just all of the content is in a zip file that you FTP to ProQuest.
Okay. And oh, that was quick. So another one, are items with an embargo sent immediately to DSpace with the embargo requirement and rely on it embargo the item until the release date?
I think that might be a version of one that I answered. So it's up to the institution if they want to export, something that is embargoed and then release the embargo from within the repository, or if they want to manage it from Vireo.
Okay. How does, or are there plans for Vireo addressing accessibility, both the system and the documents?
We have for the system, it should be there for Vireo 3 and for Vireo 4, the accessibility requirements have been part of the development. So we've had some people do some testing and some fixes. So if you do see anything that is that does not seem to be compliant with something specific, then put an issue in GitHub and we can get that addressed. So, but to any checks for the actual documents that are submitted, Vireo doesn't have a system, a way of checking the documents. No, just the system itself is accessible.
Right. Okay, with that, I think we'll have to cut off. There are a few more questions, but I know we're near the end here. I'll happily send these questions on to Stephanie, and she can respond. She's very good at these things. We just wanted to end here our presentation asking for feedback. We are librarians and we love to know what you thought of the webinar and the process. We have this form here. For those who registered for the webinar, we'll be sending that in an email For those watching us on YouTube, it will be in the description. And if you yourself are interested in presenting a webinar on an aspect of theses or dissertations, or you have an idea of what you would like to see, please let us know. We would very much love to talk to you about that. And finally, we want to say thanks to our presenter, Stephanie Larrison. I always love talking about Vireo. I always love you talking about Vireo, and I always learn something new. Special thanks to Baylor University, especially Billy Peterson Lugo, for hosting us and doing our technical assistance. And then special thanks to the Tuxedo board members who have hosted and put this together. It is now 3 o'clock. I appreciate everyone coming. I will forward these chat messages on to Stephanie, and have a great day.